Oklahoma, Mr. Sullivan, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you I want to thank the panelists for being here today. And I was out for a little while, and I'm sure maybe you've been asked the questions I may ask, but I'd like to ask them myself if I can. And this is for everyone on the panel. Based on the models provided by the Acid Rain program and the European experience, what will a cap-and-trade program cost the United States in dollars per year? Do you estimate?
We have run several, and the answer is it depends on where that cap is set. There are probably 7 gigatons of CO2 reduction that can take place that are economically wise to do, even if the emissions were priced at $0. However, to get to some of the 400 to 500 ppm levels that people have talked about, prices could get as high as $40 to $50. So the answer is it really depends. There are some that are prudent to do today, others that will need price signals upwards of $40 a ton.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
We've done some modeling work as well, and just to answer it in terms of dollars per year, the SO2 market cost a couple billion, and what we're finding, it is true, it depends on what your cap is, but what we're finding is even with the very loose types of caps that are sort of the high end of what's being proposed, you're looking at tens to maybe 100 billion a year. And of course, with the much tighter caps, such as the high end of what's being proposed, we're looking at hundreds to thousands of billions a year in costs.
Anyone? Mr. McLean?
Yes, I just wanted to, the comment was the stringency of the cap it determines everything. We analyzed Senator Carper's bill last year, and it had a modest cap with offsets, and the cost was less than $500 million a year. It was relatively small, had virtually no price impact. We're currently looking at the McCain-Lieberman bill, which is a much more significant reduction, and we will be analyzing that bill. So I think it very much depends on the shape and size of the bill.
Okay. Anyone else?
I clearly can't comment on the cost to the US. What I can say is that the UK government believes and is committed to cap and trade as the cheapest way, the least cost way to achieve the emissions reductions we need, and would point to the Stern Review commissioned by the UK government that says that action is cheaper than inaction.
Just as a matter of information, as an exchange, we're forbidden for commenting on prices and costs. It's not within the law. I might say that David Boren was a member of the advisory committee for the Chicago Climate Exchange, and OU was the first public sector university in America to join the exchange.
I would just like to respond to the statement by Mr. McLean about the cost of the Carper bill being extremely low. We've done some analyses and studied, in fact, that analysis that EPA did. And I just want to point out that the costs were very low based on some assumptions that we would disagree with, but most importantly, it was driven low by a presumption that there would be a lot of purchasing of what's called Russian hot air by the Europeans, et cetera, in that marketplace for international permits, and that was a very significant part of the reason they came up with a very low cost estimate, but that's not viewed as politically acceptable at this point in time.
Okay. And I have one more question. On Tuesday, we heard testimony that we cannot expect China and India to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions at any point in the near term or the near future. Do you support including developing countries in any type of cap-and-trade program adopted by America, the United States? Dr. Bertrand?
I believe there's an architecture in the proposal by Representatives Udall and Petrie that is very innovative and one I encourage you to look further at, and that there's a slice of allowance value that is set aside for some programs for the developing world, including technology transfer. But the allocation of those resources to the developing world is contingent on a finding that they are taking steps towards joining an international carbon regime. Same kind of finding that the State Department does with respect to making progress on human rights. It seems like a mechanism such as that could be an on-ramp for expanding participation from the developing world.
Stugan.
I'd point out that China does, in effect, participate in the EU trading programme because credits from the Clean Development Mechanism, of which there's significant investment in China, are allowed with certain limits in the EU programme.